Have you ever witnessed a moment of perfect karma? That instant when someone who hurt you deeply suddenly realizes they made the biggest mistake of their life? That's exactly what happened when Mark brought Eliza, a woman he'd found sleeping in a park just weeks earlier, to his ex-wife's lavish wedding. The look on Catherine's face when she saw them together was worth every second of heartbreak he'd endured. If you want to find out how this incredible story unfolds, keep watching until the end. And if you enjoy real-life stories of redemption and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that will touch your heart. Mark Sullivan stared at the wedding invitation that had arrived in his mailbox with a mixture of disbelief and lingering pain. The elegant cream-colored card with gold embossing announced the union of Catherine Winters, his ex-wife of 3 years, to Bradley Thompson, a corporate lawyer she'd met shortly after their divorce was finalized. "Daddy, is that from Mommy?" 7-year-old Emma peered over his shoulder, her curious eyes wide with innocence. Mark quickly tucked the invitation into his pocket. "Yes, sweetheart. Mom's getting married next month. Are we going?" Emma asked, twirling a strand of her dark hair, so much like her mother's, around her small finger. Mark hesitated. The divorce had been Catherine's idea, not his. She'd claimed they'd grown apart while he was struggling to build his contracting business. What she hadn't mentioned was that she'd already been seeing Bradley, whose family connections had recently made her a partner at her law firm. "I don't know, Em. We'll see." That night, after tucking Emma into bed, Mark sat on his porch with a beer, contemplating the invitation. Catherine had primary custody of Emma, with Mark getting weekends and Wednesday evenings. The arrangement tore at his heart daily. He'd fought for joint custody, but Catherine's legal team had painted him as an unstable provider during the proceedings. The invitation felt like salt in a wound that had never fully healed. Why would she invite him? To show off her perfect new life? To remind him of what he'd lost? Or was it simply for Emma's sake? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft rustling from the small park across from his modest rental home. In the dim streetlight, he could make out a figure settling onto a bench, arranging what looked like several bags around them. It wasn't the first time he'd noticed someone sleeping there. With winter approaching and temperatures dropping, Mark felt a pang of concern. The next morning, on his way to drop Emma at school before heading to his construction site, Mark impulsively stopped at the coffee shop and bought an extra-large coffee and a breakfast sandwich. He parked near the bench where he'd seen the figure the night before. A woman in her early 30s was carefully folding a worn sleeping bag. Her clothes were clean but obviously well worn, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Despite her circumstances, there was a dignity in her movements that struck Mark immediately. "Excuse me," he called, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "I thought you might like some breakfast." The woman looked up, wariness evident in her green eyes. "Why?" Her directness caught him off guard. "I live across the street. Saw you last night. It's getting cold." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the coffee. "Thank you. I'm Eliza." "Mark. Do you stay here often?" Eliza took a sip of coffee before answering. "Just until I figure things out. I lost my apartment last month when the medical bills piled up." Over the next few weeks, Mark found himself stopping to talk with Eliza regularly. He learned she'd been a kindergarten teacher until autoimmune issues forced her to take extended leave. Without health insurance, the medical costs had quickly consumed her savings. Her family lived across the country, and pride had kept her from reaching out. When a particularly harsh cold front was forecast, Mark couldn't bear the thought of Eliza sleeping outside. "I have a spare room," he offered one evening. "Just until the weather improves. My daughter Emma stays with me on weekends, but otherwise, the house is quiet." Eliza's initial refusal was firm, but when rain turned to sleet that night, she reluctantly accepted. What was meant to be a temporary arrangement gradually evolved. Eliza insisted on earning her keep, helping with household chores and, to Emma's delight, assisting with homework during her visits. Emma, who had struggled with the divorce, blossomed under Eliza's gentle guidance. As weeks passed, Mark found himself sharing more about his life with Eliza, his struggles building his business, the painful divorce, his fears of being an inadequate father. Eliza listened without judgment, occasionally offering insights from her own experiences that helped him see situations differently. "You should go to the wedding," Eliza said one evening as they washed dishes together, after Mark mentioned the invitation again. "Why would I put myself through that?" he asked. "For Emma. And for yourself. Show Catherine you've moved on. That you're happy." Mark scoffed. "She'd see right through that. Then take someone with you. Someone who makes you feel confident." The idea took root, and before he could overthink it, Mark asked, "Would you come with me? As my friend?" Eliza's surprise was evident. "Me? To your ex-wife's wedding? Mark, I don't have anything to wear to something like that, and I'm not exactly. You're intelligent, kind, and Emma adores you. That's more than enough." After much persuasion and a promise that they would find an appropriate outfit within their budget, Eliza agreed. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with preparation. Mark's sister Jen, who had always disliked Catherine, enthusiastically helped Eliza find a simple but elegant navy dress at a consignment shop. Mark's business had recently landed a major renovation contract, allowing him to splurge on a new suit. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect autumn weather. Emma, who would be a junior bridesmaid, had been picked up by Catherine's mother the previous day. Mark felt a knot of anxiety as he and Eliza drove to the upscale country club where the ceremony would be held. "You look beautiful," he told Eliza, and meant it. The woman who had once slept on a park bench now carried herself with quiet confidence. Her health had improved with regular meals and reduced stress, bringing a healthy glow to her complexion. "And you clean up nicely yourself," she replied with a smile that eased some of his tension. They arrived at the venue and found seats toward the back of the ceremony area. Mark noticed several of his former friends among the guests, people who had drifted away after the divorce, choosing Catherine's social circle over his. A few did double takes when they spotted him with Eliza. The ceremony was as lavish as Mark had expected. Catherine looked stunning in her designer gown, though Mark was surprised to feel only a dull ache rather than the sharp pain he had anticipated. Emma performed her role perfectly, catching Mark's eye and giving a small wave when she spotted him. It was during the reception that the moment came, the moment that would later be described in hushed, gleeful tones by those who witnessed it. Mark and Eliza were at the bar when Catherine approached, Bradley at her side. "Mark, I'm glad you could make it," Catherine said, her practiced smile not quite reaching her eyes as they flicked curiously to Eliza. "Wouldn't miss it," Mark replied. "Catherine, Bradley, this is Eliza Mitchell." "Lovely to meet you," Eliza said warmly. "Your ceremony was beautiful." Catherine's smile tightened. "Thank you. How did you two meet?" "I don't believe Mark's mentioned you before." Before Mark could answer, Emma bounded over. "Eliza. Did you see me? I didn't drop the flowers like I was worried about." "You were perfect, sweetheart," Eliza said, bending slightly to meet Emma at eye level. "Just like we practiced. You know my daughter?" Catherine's voice had taken on an edge. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "Eliza helps me with my science homework. She knows everything about plants and animals. And she makes the best chocolate chip pancakes on Sundays." Catherine's expression shifted from polite interest to barely concealed shock. "You've been staying at Mark's?" "Eliza's been a godsend," Mark said simply. "Emma's grades have improved, and she's actually excited about school now." Bradley, sensing tension, attempted to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Catherine wasn't finished. "What exactly do you do, Eliza?" "I was a kindergarten teacher," Eliza replied evenly. "Currently, I'm helping Mark with some administrative work for his business while I look for a teaching position." What Eliza didn't mention was how she'd reorganized Mark's chaotic paperwork, implemented a proper invoicing system, and helped him prepare a business plan that had impressed his bank enough to extend his line of credit. "How convenient for both of you," Catherine said, her tone implying much more. Mark felt a surge of protectiveness. "Eliza's been helping me become a better father and a better businessman. Something you always said I needed." Catherine's face flushed. For the first time since their divorce, Mark saw uncertainty in her eyes, a flicker of recognition that perhaps she had underestimated him, had given up too quickly on what they'd built together. The moment was interrupted by the wedding planner announcing it was time for the first dance. As Catherine and Bradley moved away, Catherine glanced back at Mark and Eliza, her expression unreadable. Throughout the evening, Mark noticed Catherine watching them. Watching how Eliza charmed his old friends with her genuine interest in their lives. Watching how naturally she interacted with Emma. Watching how Mark seemed more confident, more at ease than he had been during their marriage. It was during the father-daughter dance, as Mark stood at the edge of the dance floor watching Emma twirl with her new stepfather, that Catherine approached him again. "She seems nice," Catherine said, nodding toward Eliza, who was chatting with Mark's sister. "She is," Mark agreed. "More than nice. She's remarkable. Emma clearly adores her." "Yes." Catherine hesitated, then asked the question Mark could see had been bothering her. "How long have you been together?" "We're not in the way you're thinking," Mark said honestly. "Eliza needed help, and then she ended up helping me more than I ever helped her." "I don't understand." Mark considered how much to share, then decided on the truth. "I found her sleeping in Jefferson Park 3 months ago. She'd lost everything to medical bills. I offered her my spare room during the cold snap." Catherine's perfectly made-up face couldn't hide her shock. "You took in a homeless woman? Around Emma?" "Mark, that's what, Catherine? Reckless? Stupid? Or maybe it's just kind. Something you used to say you loved about me, before it became inconvenient to your career plans." The orchestra finished the song, and Emma ran over to them. "Daddy, you have to dance with me now." As Mark allowed himself to be pulled onto the dance floor by his daughter, he caught a glimpse of Catherine's face, a complex mixture of emotions playing across features he had once known better than his own. Regret was unmistakably among them. Later, as the reception wound down, Catherine found Mark alone at a table, watching Eliza teach Emma a clapping game. "She's not what I expected," Catherine admitted, sitting beside him. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. When I heard you'd brought someone, I thought you were trying to prove something." Mark laughed softly. "I was, at first. But then I realized I didn't need to prove anything to you anymore." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "We could have had a different ending, couldn't we?" "Maybe. But I'm starting to think endings are just new beginnings in disguise." As they prepared to leave, Emma begged to go home with Mark and Eliza rather than stay at her grandmother's as planned. After some negotiation, Catherine reluctantly agreed, watching with an unreadable expression as her daughter skipped happily between Mark and Eliza toward the parking lot. In the months that followed, life changed dramatically for Mark and Eliza. With her health improving and Mark's business thriving under their combined efforts, they formed a partnership, professional at first, then personal as their friendship deepened into something more. Eliza found a part-time teaching position that accommodated her health needs, while continuing to help with Mark's growing business. Catherine, perhaps influenced by what she'd witnessed at her wedding, became more flexible with custody arrangements. Emma now spent equal time with both parents, bringing balance to her young life. 1 year after the wedding, Mark received another envelope in the mail, not an invitation this time, but divorce papers. Catherine and Bradley's marriage had lasted less than 12 months. "Are you going to call her?" Eliza asked when Mark shared the news. Mark looked at the woman who had entered his life with nothing but had given him everything that mattered: confidence, partnership, and a love built on mutual respect and genuine caring. "No," he said, taking Eliza's hand. "Some chapters are meant to stay closed so better ones can begin." As they sat on the porch that evening, the same porch from which Mark had first spotted Eliza in the park, Emma played in the yard with the puppy they'd recently adopted from the shelter. The simple scene contained everything Mark had ever wanted but had nearly missed recognizing. Sometimes, the most profound second chances come disguised as our greatest challenges. For Mark, a painful divorce and an act of kindness toward a stranger had led to the family he was always meant to have. For Eliza, hitting rock bottom had ultimately guided her to solid ground. And for Catherine, watching them together at her wedding had planted the seed of understanding what true partnership really meant, a lesson that came too late for her, but just in time for Mark. If this story touched your heart, remember that kindness can transform lives in unexpected ways. Like and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of compassion and the beautiful possibilities that await when we open our hearts to others, even in our darkest moments.